Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud has replaced the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef bin Abdulaziz Al Saud with his own son, Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, the Deputy Crown Prince and the Defense Minister. In this edition of the debate, we'll discuss what this shakeup means for the Saudi regime in a kingdom where democracy does not elect officials in those posts. With a young 30-something prince in charge, we'll also look at what this means to Saudi's foreign policy and whether more adventures like the one in Yemen will occur. Well, guests joining us for this edition of the debate, we have Michael Springmann, former U.S. diplomat in Saudi Arabia, joining us from Washington. And from Beirut, we have Jihad Mouracadeh, political commentator and Middle East expert. I'd like to welcome you both, and let me start with you, Jihad Mouracadeh, looking at Saudi Arabia rewriting succession as we have witnessed, and the king replacing the heir with his son. And when I look at that, obviously it's out of custom, and I'd like to get your reaction. But then we have the age factor here, making him really young to run well, practically to be the one running this country. What is your reaction to what has happened there in Saudi Arabia?
I would like to take the age factor first, because the age factor is quite important in Saudi Arabia, since he's not the only young prince who has been promoted, but quite a few others, including the new Minister of the Interior, who is just a few years older, and who is a nephew of Mohammed bin, not bin Salman, bin Nayef. He's just a few years older. There is a new young generation, so there is this idea in Saudi Arabia, or at least with King Salman, to hand over power to the new generation and therefore jump the generation of Mohammed bin Nayef. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, on the one hand, you have the lack of experience, as you so rightly said. But on the other hand, it carries a lot of support and popularity amongst the younger Saudi generation, who are sick and tired and, of the old 80-something generation. It has been the rule in Saudi Arabia. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, it is not going to change much, because already the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, was already conducting quite a few things in the area, whether it's Qatar, Yemen, Saudi-American relationship, and so on. And also his brother has been appointed as Saudi ambassador to the U.S., so nothing much is going to change from this point of view. Mm-hmm. However, the Interior Ministry has been handed over to the nephew of Mohammed bin Nayef, and whose father, by the way, is the head of the Eastern Province. So a lot of balance here.
Well, Michael Springmann, we want to take a look at the accomplishments of this young prince who has now obviously replaced the heir. What are we looking at? Are we looking at the war in Yemen? Are we looking at Saudi Arabia's budget that's being burned through for this war? Are we looking at what exactly?
I think we're looking at a mess. The Emir Mohammed, 31 years old, is responsible for a lot of problems in the country in just the last couple of years. As you mentioned, he's behind the disastrous war in Yemen. He's behind this push to isolate and subjugate Qatar, and he's the man behind the hard line against Iran. Plus the fact that he's got this rather odd idea of redeveloping Saudi Arabia and making it less dependent on oil, but to date, about the only thing that he's done is sell shares in the Aramco oil company. So he's done nothing abroad except make trouble for the country and lose its a favorable view of, if any, of countries in the region surrounding the kingdom. And he's done nothing at all for the internal mess of Saudi Arabia that's trying to find funds to support its adventurous activities abroad and try and cut down on its spending at home, cutting subsidies, cutting funds for students abroad. They're now limited to a bachelor's degree outside the country, and people want to go for an advanced degree, and they're not allowed to do it anymore unless the money comes out of their own family's pocket. So I think that putting the Emir Mohammed in charge of this and making him next in line to the throne is not a good idea.
What about the timing of this, Jihad Mouracadeh? Do you think this has anything to do with the visit by the U.S. President Donald Trump? And I'd like to, because of lack of time, I'm going to try to forge this question into two questions into one. Is it true that there was a precondition for Americans for him to become, to get that post, and that was for him, the prince, to recognize Israel?
Well, there have been items in the news about his close, or his intention to have close relationship with Israel. I don't know for a fact that this is true or not true. On the other hand, the timing, you said since time is short, the timing of this has been in the offing for quite some time. I do not think that it is specifically related to President Trump's visit to Riyadh. However, there has been a close relationship between the Crown Prince and Mohammed bin Salman and President Trump since his first visit to Washington, and of course during the visit of Mr. Trump to Riyadh. I'm not sure that I would agree with your guests in Washington about Saudi Arabia causing all these troubles in the area. The troubles have been in the offing for quite some time, whether it's Yemen, whether it's Qatar. The Qatar situation is not new at all, since, as we all know, it has been boiling for some time, and already in 2014. And the hard line against Iran has been also there for quite some time, whether it is Mohammed bin Salman or Mohammed bin Nayef or King Salman.
Well, this appointment, Michael Springmann, don't you think at the same time when we want to talk about the U.S., it doesn't quite make logical sense based on the history that the U.S. has had with one of its closest allies in the Middle East, because it's, you know, you have this young person who is somewhat unpredictable. Isn't that a consideration for the U.S. to think about who they're aligning themselves with?
It definitely is. The American policy in the past, even when I was back in Jeddah in the late 80s, has been to look for stability and continuity in the region. And that doesn't seem to be happening with the Emir Mohammed. Yes, it's nice to move from the geriatric old folks home kings and princes we've had throughout the country's history to someone younger, but it's this big jump from some guy in his 80s to a fellow who's untested and untried, except in his major mistakes, in his 30s. So I think that they could have done better to regularize this, and granted that they've reestablished the control of the Sudari 7 in the king's decree not too long ago. But still, there is mass confusion, and I wonder how long there will be an internal power struggle to try and find a middle ground between the untried, untested, wet behind the ears emir and his father, who has one foot in the grave and the other one in a wheelchair in an old folks' home.
Foreign policy-wise, Jihad Mouracadeh, what are we looking at? Obviously, there are some things that are set in motion in the region, from Yemen to Iraq to, of course, the words that keep getting this statement is repeated throughout the weeks so far, and that is him saying we're going to take the war inside of Iran. Do you think that he's going to remain as aggressive when it comes to foreign policy, i.e. wars that are happening right now?
Well, you must make a difference between the rhetoric and actual facts on the ground. Because on the one hand, he can say whatever he wants to say, but the foreign minister, Mr. Adel Jubair, said something totally different, which is Iran is not an enemy. With the problem we have is the behavior of Iran. So the young prince giving his own interpretation of this is quite different. He is not going to take on Iran at all. Also, do not forget that the National Guard in Saudi Arabia is under the control of one of the Sudairi princes, so a different one from the Nayef or the Salman. So no, rhetoric is very good. People throw things at each other. But at the end of the day, a few weeks ago when I was on this program and I was asked about the responsibility of Saudi Arabia in the bombings in Tehran, well, I said I do not think so. And sure enough, when the Revolutionary Guards shot their missiles, they shot it at Deir ez-Zor and not at Riyadh. So Riyadh will not take on Iran face to face, but they will do whatever they can, try to stop developments in the region that are supported by Iran.
30 seconds, the last question, Michael Springmann. What is going to be his biggest blunder at this point, based on how you have seen him conduct himself in the various theaters at this point of his exposure, from the economy to the wars?
Well, it's kind of hard to tell which is the biggest blunder, because the mess in Yemen continues, and Yemeni soldiers have shot down a number of Saudi soldiers. They fired missiles at Riyadh, and the prince, Mohammed, he's still going on about the evils of Iran, which is, I think, a real major mistake, and he thinks he's got the backing of Donald Trump, who knows nothing at all about foreign affairs. So it's close your eyes and point, which is worse, Qatar, Iran, or Yemen. I think the least of them maybe would be Qatar, but that's close to home. So it's it's a toss-up, really.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you, Michael Springmann, former U.S. diplomat in Saudi Arabia, and thank you, Jihad Mouracadeh, political commentator, Middle East expert. Thanks for tuning into another edition of The Debate. From me, the entire team in the capital, Tehran. Goodbye.